I want to talk about this Senate Bill 23098. I think that also, a lot of the things in it kind of go after the same thing as the drivers' rights movement. Surprisingly enough, because it's not asking for what some of the states go after. It's just, it's in my opinion, and I read through the whole PDF, but it's more about transparency. I read some of the things like, making sure that the drivers see the breakdown of what Uber's being paid, what the driver's being paid before you can tip. I don't know if, I do, when we get to it, I do have a couple questions, but I want you to kind of walk us through that, because I know you're familiar with the drivers' rights movement. We talked about it the last time. It seems very similar to that.
Yeah, that's not coincidental. So that's great. So I'm also a member of a non-traditional labor union here in Colorado, the Colorado Independent Drivers United. We are organized under CWA, the Communication Workers of America, but we don't really operate like a traditional trade union because, again, like we're independent drivers. Working off of our own devices and vehicles and not in a shared workspace. It's not going to be like your average shop floor with an organized workforce. So what we've mostly been pushing on as a group is getting the companies to do like the drivers' rights movement is pushing for, like, hey, like, you make this whole set of promises and offers to the public as consumers, and also to working people who want to work on these platforms, that you're going to be your own boss. You get to call the shots, do your own thing. We're going to offer you jobs, in a contractor fashion. Say yes, say no. You're in charge of your own work. And then what actually ends up happening when push comes to shove is that they have all these really elaborate ways of manipulating the user interface, what they tell you, what they don't tell you, the algorithm they run on, to kind of get people to do more work for less money, and not see that they're being played until you've tried this for 6 months and concluded that it's a ripoff and you move on. So they're burning through drivers. Some of us, and granted, like Steve and David and myself and in my work, because I'm like a multi-apper on the delivery side, you find a way to make it work for you and it's better. But there's kind of this sense of like, yeah, it's better for me because they're figuring out how to scam other people into taking these worthless offers. And that's sad. I don't like that. I don't like for that to happen to consumers who think that this must be a pretty good deal for the people who are, bringing them their sushi or whatever. So we've really pushed on that. And then the other side for us in CDU and the Independent Drivers United is to go after the regulatory agencies in our state and try to figure out why they're not enforcing the rules that they set. So we had the TNC Act in 2014 allowed Uber and Lyft to come into the state. That was before I was even here, back here anyway.
That's when I started.
Okay. Yeah. Yep. So it put TNCs, Transportation Network Companies, under the purview of the Public Utilities Commission, which is a little strange, but I think it made sense at the time because the PUC had been dealing with taxi companies. And so, the idea was they're going to collect a fee from these companies annually, and they're going to use it to, set some rules and hopefully enforce those rules. But they haven't been, right? And of course, how would they? They don't really do consumer protection. They definitely don't do worker rights or like labor disputes. That's not in their wheelhouse. So it's been kind of a strange venue for them all along. Mm-hmm. And so we've tried a couple of different times to like figure out ways to like put some pressure on that agency. Hey, like, you kind of do have this line in your own rules that says that the companies are supposed to be transparent. They're supposed to give full information. It doesn't give a lot of detail, but it's in there. Can you at least enforce that? And it's just not in their wheelhouse. That's not what they do. So our bill is going to make those transparency requirements explicit. Right? You must show a breakdown of, what the take rate or take amount is, what the driver is being paid. The driver has a full right to complete information about the destination, how much they'll be paid, what the mileage is going to be.
You're talking about from the customer side.
From the customer side and for our
right.
And
but
for
I mean,
our
the customer side also will see. Here's how it goes.
Yes.
Here's where it's going.
Yes. And I think that's reasonable, right? Because sometimes I've, and I've talked to people who are outside of our little gig app bubble or, gig life bubble. They'll be like, yeah, but I spent like, $50 on an Uber ride the other night. They must be getting paid really well. I'm like, well, I mean, you would hope so. But I took a $19 ride the other day just to get to the Capitol on a snowy day. It's about a mile. It's not that long of a trip, but I didn't want to walk it on the ice, so I just called for a ride. It was a $19 ride for 1 mile. And I asked my driver, how much did they offer you? You guys want to take a guess how much they offered him?
What?
It was better than $5.
David's gonna go. I'm gonna let David take this.
I was saying $5, but what do you think, Steve?
I was gonna say a little more with the up. I don't know. Was it the upfront model? Because I mean, here in Denver, we're using the upfront pricing where you see everything, the miles. They're now doing the full. Here's the amount you're gonna make. Here's where you're going.
Sure.
I would say 7.
Yeah, they offered him 8, but
okay.
Yeah. And I still think like that's pretty bonkers, right? Because it's less than half of the amount you paid. And, of course, like we still have to pay for our own vehicle and our device and the service on our device and our insurance and our gas money and our upkeep. So how is the company making off with that much of what you are paying as a consumer? They don't even have the overhead. The driver has the overhead. So, I think breaking that down for people when right now it looks so much like, oh, if I pay a lot for a ride, the driver must be getting paid. What are they whining about? This is really like we just kind of have to open up this, black box that they're hiding in and shine some light on the issue.
Yeah, I feel like, I do feel like, some people, there was the time when drivers were paid so well, like you were talking about in 2014, 15, 16, like that was just great. That was to flood the market with drivers. That's how they do it. That was the oversaturation 3 years. I do feel like some people understand the drivers aren't paid enough, but I get some pretty advanced people who understand it even beyond and go, yeah, but if they're, and David and I used to ask for just this, and I think it was just last week, we were saying that maybe something a little more is needed. I don't exactly know what it is, but we always used to say, hey, if you show it all up front, it's kind of on the driver. If the driver doesn't want to take it, he doesn't have to. And if that's not going to make him money, I mean, a company is allowed to charge what they want if they're not cheating the driver. If they're being honest with the driver and saying, hey, it pays $1, they can charge $50 and go out of business.